welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Katie, otherwise known as the Vintage Academic, and I am a junior transfer student at UC Berkeley studying anthropology with a focus in archaeology. I make fun vlogs and informational videos about the transfer process, life as a transfer student, and sometimes some vintage clothing to mix things up a bit. If that all sounds good to you, then go ahead and hit the subscribe button for more UC Berkeley and vintage related content. Ooh, and it is raining outside, so I am sorry if it's noisy. Today, I am bringing you guys some perspective on what it has been like to transfer during a pandemic. But I will not be speaking on my experience in this video. There is a plethora of other videos that you can go and watch on my channel that I will leave in the description below if you would like to know more about my personal experiences and thoughts of being a transfer student and the added difficulties of transferring during a pandemic into upper division courses with an online format. So instead of me talking about my personal experience yet again on this channel, since I can only provide the perspective from the social sciences, I want to open up my channel, and today we will be hearing from a couple of other UC Berkeley students with different majors about what their experiences have been like. Even though my platform is relatively small, I do think it's important to use whatever platform you have in order to share this kind of information and give a space for other people to speak as well. So I'm really grateful to have a group of people who have been willing to come onto my channel and share their experiences. Also, just to clarify, I originally intended for this video to be more of a what are the differences between community college and UC Berkeley, and while I would still love to make that video, the questions that I asked and the nature of this unique situation kind of led the discussion more towards what it's like to transfer during a pandemic. But I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to let our guests go ahead and introduce themselves.
My name's Hollyl Pilling. My major is psychology. Actually, I started as an interdisciplinary field studies major, and then I switched to a double major, and now I've dropped one of my majors, and now I'm a psychology major. I decided to transfer to UC Berkeley because it's the best school that I got into.
My name is Vera, and I'm currently a junior transfer studying economics and data science. I chose UC Berkeley because of its prominence to Silicon Valley and San Francisco. After my freshman year at UC Davis, I was originally a pre-med major, but I realized really quickly that wasn't the path I wanted to take, as science wasn't something I was truly passionate about. So when I came back to community college, I attended Berkeley City College. Technology and business was something I was truly passionate about, and so I really wanted to attend UC Berkeley just because of its prominence to the tech and whole finance area, and so that's what led me here.
Hi everyone. First of all, Katie, thanks for having me on your channel. It's a real pleasure to be here. I'm introducing myself. My name is Aymaan Sumandi. I am a political science transfer from Casamance River College. This is actually the sister school to Katie's college, Sacramento City, so a little bit of common lineage in that sense. And as far as why did I decide to transfer to UC Berkeley, I think that's an interesting question, and there's a little bit of a story behind that, because when I initially started community college, my plan was actually to go to an institution overseas to study something completely different. My first semester, I took an intro to American government class, and hook, line, and sinker, I just kind of got reeled into the political science department. And as far as Cal in particular, I kind of had an idea that I wanted to transfer to UC because they're in California, you're not paying, out-of-state tuition, so that's great. I didn't actually think I'd be coming to Cal because, Cal has kind of this reputation for being tippy-top up there with UCLA and Stanford for, the best colleges in California. And so I was like, I'm just gonna play it safe and go to maybe UC Irvine. Or I had a couple of sit-downs with my professors, with my mentors at community college, and they're like, don't fool yourself, just try and get in and you probably will. And so I ended up applying to UC Berkeley in addition to several other UC schools, and fortunately I was given the opportunity to study here. For political science in particular, Berkeley has kind of a long legacy of contributing in substantive ways to the discipline, and it makes me want to be a part of that kind of progress with the discipline itself. And so that's why I chose UC Berkeley over say the other UCs.
Thank you all so much for introducing yourselves and agreeing to be here today. Every transfer student has a different journey to UC Berkeley, so it's been really interesting getting to hear your stories. Now, let's get into the actual questions. My first question is, in your opinion, what has been the biggest difference between community college and UC Berkeley in regards to your major?
At community college, I was a quadruple major with a certificate. So I had 4 different majors, and I was also pursuing a general education certificate. My majors in community college were communications, natural science, sciences, social and behavioral sciences, psychology, and a certificate in general education. I originally went to community college just to get my general education out of the way, and then I ended up adding more and more and more and more degrees as I went along. So the difference between there and here is I've very much narrowed down my focus, and also I chose Berkeley because of the school only slightly weighing in the program. I actually, like I said earlier, I applied as a different major than I ended up doing. I looked down, once I got into Cal, I wasn't expecting to get into Cal. Once I got into Cal, I looked down their list of majors, picked the one that looked the best for me, which ended up being psychology. I had a little bit of the prerequisites done, but certainly not as many as I needed. So I ended up taking 13 units, 4 classes over the summer, and then a full course load plus a couple during the first semester. And now I'm ready to finally declare come January.
You know, coming out of high school and entering UC Davis my freshman year, the major differences between being at a 4-year university compared to a 2-year community college was really major. I definitely didn't feel as prepared coming in straight out of high school. Just the courses at UC, definitely at a more, I guess, UC level, meaning they're definitely a lot more rigorous. And for the first time, that was really where I was introduced to the concept of reader courses. I actually failed my courses at UC Davis, as well as the lecture halls. A lot of the lectures, the students can be up to 400 and even 1,000 students. For me, I had a lot of test anxiety, so that was very complicated, but of course, you know, you can get proper accommodations. Another thing I didn't really realize that UC's had were discussion sessions. At my community college, there was just lecture usually and office hours as well, but I never really had discussion sessions. So the UC is a lot more of a system run by students as well as teachers. They're really collaborative, but compared to community college, there isn't much of that. And there's definitely, with, you know, the increase in rigor and the increase of GSIs for each class you're in, I would say there's definitely a lot more resources and tutoring help at a UC compared to a community college.
This might sound kind of like a mundane or insignificant thing, but the size of the department itself, that's kind of been the biggest, no pun intended, the biggest change for me. Because when I was at CRC in community college, I had my choice of whatever class I wanted to take for political science. Those classes never filled up. As a matter of fact, a lot of the times we actually didn't have enough students to, go forward with the class. And so we had to beg, borrow, and plead with the admins to not terminate the class before it started. That to me has been kind of the biggest difference coming into Cal. For example, this coming semester for enrollment, for phase 1, you're only allowed to get into 2 poli-sci classes for upper division. Like, they will not allow you to enroll in more than 2. And the chances of getting into a 3rd during phase 2, which is later on in the year, is, relatively minuscule because of just how many students are political science majors at Cal. So, not having that kind of ability to pick and choose in a leisurely manner is definitely a huge difference to me. The size of the department is also a huge advantage. For example, at UC Berkeley, we have counselors not just from the college and not just from the university as a whole, but also for our majors in specific. And in my experience so far, those major counselors have just been the most knowledgeable, kind people that are just out there to help you. They're out there to help you plan your degree and to point you in which direction, what classes you need to take, what classes you don't need to take, what opportunities there are. And so having that support system, different than it would have been in person, but even online, I still feel like the department is supporting students and is able to sort of give us those resources to get the help that we need. And in addition to that, generally the opportunities in the university as a whole. At UC Berkeley, I can only speak for political science, of course, but we have programs like Cal in the Capital, which is internships in Sacramento, which is, home for me, but also a program called UC DC, which for a whole semester, they'll ship you over to Washington, DC, while you take classes, but at the same time also intern, for a member of Congress or for a political action committee or for some kind of organization, and that and study abroad to all these different countries and all these different universities in the UK and, whatever country you might want to go to. Those are opportunities that, you might not have in community college. I'm looking forward to really taking advantage of all of those opportunities that do come with the size of an institution and a department like political science at Berkeley.
Community college and UC Berkeley are definitely not the same thing, and it's interesting to see how each one of you has had a slightly different experience in your transition to Cal. For my next question, I would like to know, what has been the biggest difference in terms of coursework?
I've cut back on coursework since community college. I used to average roughly 21 units a semester. That's a terrible idea. Don't do that if you come to Cal. Don't do it. Don't do it. I took 7 units at Cal over the summer while taking a couple of JC or community college courses. That was rough, just on the Cal end of things, not even counting the CC classes that I was taking. The courses themselves, let's see, we're online. That makes a really big difference to things. It's kind of sucked a little both places because I was partly online for spring semester and then completely in the summer and then completely in the fall, which means I've seen online courses at community college and at Cal, but they've been tough both places. I don't know. That's been mostly due to the nature of the circumstances more so than the actual classes though. The coursework, in my opinion, you would expect more of a jump is what I'm going to say. You would expect Cal to have been a lot harder, and maybe it will be. Again, I'm a first semester junior, essentially. Maybe it's going to get really tough, as time moves on, but it was pretty much comparable to my experience at community college. But again, this is all pandemic affected, so I'll probably have a clearer actual answer to that like a couple years down the line when hopefully we've seen what it looks like outside of pandemic conditions and things like that. It's kind of nice saying, like, being able to say, oh yeah, I go to Cal, like that's why it's hard. Like, no, girl, I was suffering before. It's just now I go to Cal and it's like, oh, finally it's an excuse. Because when you go to community college, it's like, it's not an excuse unless you're taking like 18, 19, 20 units. And then they're like, oh, well, that's why you're dying. At Cal, you can be taking 13, 15 units and be like, it's really, really hard, really tough, really suffering right now. They're like, yeah, because it's a hard school in people's minds. It's all perception though. The actual experience is like, to be honest, no different than community college right now, really.
Yeah, I would say the biggest difference in terms of coursework at a university is that me having experience both in the quarter system as well as the semester system, lectures kind of go by like that. The classes are usually very fast paced, especially STEM, math, or, just like technical classes. And it kind of depends on your instructor, but usually a class will have homework every lecture or, have problem sets due each week. Some of the assignments, especially on the ones on data cam, took approximately 4 hours each to do, where there are labs due can be a lot more time consuming. And from what I've heard from my friends who are either English or history majors, sometimes they'll read a book each week or each other week. So yeah, when it comes to a UC, I would definitely say there's a heavier course load compared to a community college, where I feel that for community college, there's a lot more leeway, but definitely when you're at a UC, professors kind of already expect you to know a lot of the material and of course to turn in your assignments on time. So that's something to be really wary of is, making those deadlines.
I think the short answer to that would be rigor, but I kind of want to dig into that a little bit because that's too little. I think first of all, I have to give props to my professors in community college. The coursework that they provided us in community college was rigorous to the point that once I got into UC Berkeley, I was expecting to just be, hit by a truck and, I can't do any of this. It's going to be super hard coursework. But then I realized that all of that coursework that I had been doing in community college lined up really well and prepared me really well for UC Berkeley. Now, of course, there is a level of adjustment because then it wouldn't be transferring. Kind of that learning curve or the adjustment curve was a lot less steep than I thought it would have been. And I credit that to my community college professors in their entirety. But yeah, in general, the rigor, so to speak, is a lot more. And I think the way that manifests is definitely readings. So in my political science classes in community college, you're talking about 50, 60 pages of reading max per week. But at UC Berkeley, you can safely expect to be reading 100 to 150 pages plus per week per class. And it's a massive amount of reading that if you hadn't already conditioned yourself to tackle those kind of readings before, it does hit you pretty hard. From there, also, it's important to understand that that's kind of where cooperation and teamwork comes into play. It is kind of really impossible to read every single thing that your professor assigns. And, I came to understand that after a couple of weeks. And so it became really important to me to find, a support system, to find classmates and friends who are open to working together, interacting, who at the same time I trust enough to, not have to read, but just rely on their notes instead of reading for myself. Additionally, at Cal, we have the whole GSI system, graduate school instructors who are PhD candidates usually, who assist professors in teaching their classes. And quickly I came to realize that the GSI for one of my classes, he was really great in terms of helping students out. His role as a GSI for one of my first classes at Cal really impacted me in a large way and made me feel more at home home as a student. GSIs, lots of readings, and rigor-wise, community college prepared me very well, which is a point I know, Katie, you've brought up in a lot of your videos, is that, this idea that community college is less or doesn't prepare you well. I can, say with 100% certainty that that's not true at all. The work we were doing is definitely on par with, what we would have gotten in a lower division class at Berkeley. Maybe not the exact same, but on par in terms of level of intensity.
It's interesting that we've all had similar experiences, and I think that kind of speaks to the reputation of places like Cal. We all expected it to be harder than it is, yet in all cases it seems like community college prepared us pretty well. Like Holly said, a lot of it's about perception. And if you'd like to know a little bit more about the nitty-gritty details of homework and what homework assignments social sciences students like me have, go ahead and check out the description. I will leave a link to a video that I made all about a week's worth of my homework at UC Berkeley. But moving on to the next question. My next question is, what about social life? How has it changed? Has it been affected by the pandemic?
It's really interesting. I'd love to give into that stereotype of what social life? I'm a Berkeley kid. I just stay up all night and grind on my homework. But that's not actually the case in actuality, as much as it feels like that sometimes. My social life, I noticed that I put more emphasis onto it. That's a personal choice. Because of the pandemic, I felt really, really lonely, and it's made me really sad. I'm very extroverted, so I love doing things like this where I talk to someone for a good amount of time, but I don't get that opportunity very much these days unless I really make time for it. So I have two people that are in my social bubble, basically, that I will go out of my way to go and see and spend time with. A couple of people that I still have in my life that are real life actual friends in person. With that being said, I haven't seen many people from Cal. I've seen one person socially distanced from Cal who actually went to my CC with me and transferred the same year that I did, which is super interesting. Other than that, I have no real friends at school, at my school. I have a couple people that I see in person from my community college and from high school because I'm living in my hometown with my parents.
In terms of social life, I think this is different for everybody. But for me, however, I've had an amazing social life so far for my fall semester. I've really had a great chance to connect with a lot of recent transfers. I find the transfer community here extremely supportive and welcoming. Of course, since everything is online right now due to COVID, I've been able to connect with a lot of transfers through social media apps. It's really nice because we'll have similar interests to talk about, similar passions, and they're just like me. They're in a pandemic. They kind of want to meet new people, make new friends. So even though campus is closed and not everyone is in Berkeley at the moment, I find the community and network here at Cal extremely supportive and friendly, and there's just a lot of great opportunity to meet amazing people and to make new friends here. So I'm really happy about that.
Social life, or I think the proper term would be lack thereof. COVID's kind of, sucked the life out of social life, or rather sucked the social out of social life. But for me personally, I chose to stay in Sacramento because I knew that everything was online. And so why am I paying Bay Area rent, to be on my computer all day when I could just do that from home? I definitely made that choice from the beginning. If it was online, then I'd stay. And yeah, that has definitely affected my ability to connect with other Cal students. And I think that's one of the big things for me, was that to this day, I kind of feel caught in between community college and Cal, because I have a lot of connections back at my community college because my role in the department was kind of pretty much doing everything, right? I was the department's TA and the tutor and everything, and so I knew everyone, and so I was friendly with everyone. Because we're already online anyways, both at community and at Cal, I've kind of been caught in between those two groups of people, so it's kind of been hard to detach from community college completely and make it to Cal. And also it's been difficult to get to know people in the first place, right? And I'm sure this is something that everyone can kind of attest to, but getting to know someone like this over Zoom is, it's all great, except for the fact that you don't really get to know them very well at all. It doesn't compare at all to sitting inside a classroom, or, kind of those just chance interactions you have running into each other in the hall, or those are just interactions that you won't get. At the same time, it's not all bad. I would be lying if I said it was all bad, because there have been a lot of group chats. And before, in community college, we didn't really need to, because we all knew each other on an individual level, so we all had a friends group chat. When I got to Cal here, every class was like, hey, let's make a Discord server. We've been really active on that platform, both in a kind of academic capacity and in a personal capacity. And that's something that I've really enjoyed, because I think that it does help to, let me connect to other Cal students.
I definitely agree that socializing during a pandemic has been difficult, as we all know. But I have been continually impressed by the way Cal students have continued to thrive and reach out to each other and build a community in new and meaningful ways. For my next question, I would like to hear about what the biggest challenge or difficulty has been in your transition from community college to UC Berkeley.
I wonder in 2020 what the biggest challenge or difficulty could have been. It's been COVID-19 and all of the things that have come with that, and the election year, and the murder hornets, and losing friends, and not seeing people in person, and not being able to do some of the things that I like to do. You know, all together, it's been 2020. That's been the biggest challenge in my transition. Other than that, I should have shared something important in the introduction section that I didn't share until now. But part of the reason that I wanted to do this is because I think I have an interesting perspective on the other end of non-traditional transfer. I'm 17 years old. So I used community college as the last 2 years of high school, more so than like a re-entry student who's coming in later in life after having done something first and then decided to come back to school. So I went to a CC as a substitute for high school almost, and then graduated when I would have graduated from high school. Part of the difficulty has been things like missing out on high school graduation and missing out on prom, but everyone did my year. At the same time, it's like, well, COVID would have made it so that I would have missed out pretty much no matter what, but it feels kind of bad to not have like walked for graduation in high school and not have gone to my senior prom with my partner and all this kind of stuff. That was a personal challenge that's a little bit unique to me. That's not the whole 2020 thing that everyone dealt with. That was also a huge challenge.
With COVID, everything kind of being abruptly moved onto a virtual semester has been challenging both for the students as well as the instructors. What's really nice is that a lot of the courses, most of the courses are recorded by the instructors so that, students are always able to look back if they missed a lecture. And another thing is, for now, there's a lot of use of Discord and Zoom for communication to both parties. Discord has been really helpful to just get help, to contact my GSIs directly and get help on any projects for my data science class. But yeah, there has definitely been a challenge just kind of moving to the online remote type of format in virtual learning, since you don't really have in-person, peer-to-peer or instructor to kind of tell you what to do. A lot of the times I really like to set up my schedule on, my Google Calendar to make sure that I watch lectures on time and able to not miss deadlines as well.
The low-hanging fruit for that question is COVID. I mean, what else, right? When you get into the COVID grievances, there's just so much to unpack there. The fact that you and I have to pay full tuition for online classes, which, was fine in community college because it's $45 a unit. But here it's, 15 grand or however much it ends up being after financial aid. There's that kind of feeling that you're not necessarily being cheated, but you're not getting your money's worth, especially when someone like you or me, who's never actually been to campus, never used any campus facilities, never set foot in the city of Berkeley in the past year, you have to pay for your transit pass and your gym fees and your equipment fees. And it's just like, I don't use that. So that's kind of one level of the COVID grievances, but kind of more on the academic side. Similarly to how I talked about in my social life, I felt caught in between these new people that I'm meeting at Cal and these people that I already knew from community college. I felt kind of caught in the middle in the first couple of weeks. Here I am sitting in the same chair at the same desk, looking at the same screen, the same webcam, the same microphone, and the same book. And well, not the same books, different books, but it's the same everything that I finished community college in. And somehow I'm supposed to convince myself that I'm at Cal. And so for me, that was a huge mental barrier that I kind of had to get over in the first couple of weeks, because I just had this kind of echoing thought that you're not a Cal student, you're not a Cal student. You can hang all the banners you want, but you're not. For the first couple of weeks, it was really hard to articulate what you want to say in class, because you expect there to be people who have been at Cal for 2-3 years, and you're like, what do I know in comparison to those people? Even though I know objectively that my community college gave me a great base of knowledge and my professors were amazing in preparing me, but there's still that kind of feeling once you get there. It's like, what if you don't actually know what you know? And and they know more. I can't really explain how I overcame that. I guess it was just a process of trying, and it was just a process of being kind of summoning the courage to raise your hand, or came to realize something that I hold to very strongly, is that everyone has something to contribute that is useful. And that as students, we kind of all came here to learn, including to learn from each other. And so really, I'm doing my classmates a disservice if I don't say what I have to say, because I bring my own perspective to the table, my own experiences. Not that it's any better or worse than anyone else, but it's just different. That, in addition to kind of the disconnect between myself and feeling like a Cal student, was definitely the biggest issue that I faced.
Thank you all for your perspectives. As far as COVID goes, we're all in the same boat, but it's still interesting to see how everybody's experiences and perspectives can be so different. And to end on a positive note, my last question is, what has been the biggest pro of your transfer to UC Berkeley?
Pleasing my family. I come from two sides of an immigrant background. One of them's brown, so I have all those like quintessential experiences of like the immigrant kid who's supposed to like live up to expectations and like make it in the new world or whatever. But you always have that like thing in the back of your head that's like, you got to do good for them in any family, but it's even like twofold when they've gone through so much to like get to this country and make a better life, I guess. But also I come from a family on the other side of that. I come from a family of academics. It's like high expectations, I guess, to live up to. I'm also the oldest on my dad's side of all the cousins. So you've got to like set the pace for everyone else in your family to like follow suit or whatever. My family's all like very chill about it, but it's pressure I put on myself because I have the feeling that I should be doing more and I should be making people proud. So the biggest pro is like making people proud, having my grandparents and my aunts and my uncles and my parents be able to say, oh yeah, the kid goes to Cal, you know, Holly goes to Cal. And it's the best psychology program in the world, tied with Stanford, I think, according to our Lord and Savior US World and News Report. I know that I basically dropped out of high school in a lot of your eyes, but now that I've gotten into Cal, you can't complain about it because, you know, like the best students in my high school ended up the same place that I am, and we're going to walk across the same stage in the same, just like a couple years difference. So you can't really say much about it. So I guess that is the pro. I'm very honest. I'm like brutally honest. So I'm like, why'd you go to Cal? Rankings. Why are you happy that you went to Cal? Rankings. Like perception. It's all perception, I guess. There's lots of other pros too. Let's backpedal a little bit. The pro that caused me to go here, admittedly, prestige. But after that, they have a great design program, which I didn't know about until I came here. Just the connection with like world-class folks. Like it's my first semester here and I'm taking a class with like the premier sleep psychology researcher. A couple of my professors have been like Harvard trained doctors in their area. And I'm like, sick, very cool, you know? I really like my advisors. Both of my major advisors are like really tight. I like both of them a lot. There's so many opportunities. There really are. It's like there's always options of something to do. And if you're assertive enough and you really look for it and reach out, you can find opportunities. It's great.
So the biggest pro is definitely, in my opinion, the networking opportunities that Cal provides to its students, especially even when things are online, you know, attending events at, you can find on Handshake, attending career panels, and being really involved in clubs. You really have the opportunity to network and meet a bunch of new people from various industries, whether that's students or professionals. Cal really has a great networking system. And because of that UC Berkeley name, I've been able to, you know, just reach out to a lot of recruiters and managers at different top companies. And yeah, it's definitely what people say about Cal is real. It really provides a lot of great stepping stones to open, you know, doors and opportunities to really meet an amazing network and to really improve your professional development. Been able to learn so much about companies, and I'm just really grateful that Cal has been connected with so many people. And yeah, I think that's an amazing opportunity that students should be really aware of when thinking about transferring to Cal. All the amazing prospects, but opportunities for your professional development as well as career, and for you to establish very valuable, meaningful relationships beyond college.
I gotta say the people, and the people is kind of a big statement. So let's I'm gonna dig into that a little bit. So obviously I talked about my GSI earlier. And it wasn't just that one particular GSI, it was my other professors who were knowledgeable, of course, as one would expect a professor to be, but also kind in the sense that they understood what was going on. It's a pandemic. People are just kind of not in the normal frame of mind and not in the normal circumstances. And I think that for my professors, at least, and of course experiences may vary, they were really, really great about adjusting to that. Not necessarily compromising, because I don't think we compromised. We still got the same rigor and the same level of instruction that we would have, but to adjust themselves to that kind of online framing. But also the people in general. One of the fears that I had transferring was, of course, UC Berkeley has this reputation of cutthroat competition. I've heard stories of students, cutting out pieces of information from library books so that other students couldn't access it, just shenanigans like that, or during study sessions, just deliberately feeding misleading information so that they wouldn't get hit by the curve. Those stories were like terrifying to me going to Cal. And I was, I got to keep my guard up. I have to always have, eyes looking out in the back of my head, even though all that's there is my wall. But that really wasn't the case. And I was really glad to figure that out. I don't know if it's because I'm a transfer student, I connected with other transfer students, but I think even that, the non-transfer students who I spoke with and who I connected and interacted with, like, there was none of that. I quickly realized that if you position yourself and you kind of frame yourself, and if you make it clear to other people that, hey, you're looking for people to collaborate with, indeed make friends with, then those people will find you eventually. And that was my experience in all of my classes. And I'm really glad to have had that experience, because now I have people who are like, hey, what classes are you taking next semester? Okay, cool, we're taking that one together. Going into this next semester, I already have kind of my group of people that I know are reliable and I can rely on, and we can study together. Definitely the biggest kind of pro, or the best thing about transferring so far, has been connecting with those people, hearing what they have to say, getting to know them as people, and just growing as an academic by those interactions. And so it's the people at Cal that kind of have made this online semester worth it to me in that sense.
Those are all great reasons why Cal is a fantastic school, and I'm happy to hear that you're all able to draw good experiences from this online semester. And lastly, I lied, I actually have another question. I would like to ask you guys if there is any advice that you would like to give to potential and future transfer students.
If you've already finished all your applications, take a breather over winter break. But if you hadn't, please get those done like as soon as possible. Because I had my private schools and my out-of-states due like March, like later on. And I'm like, that's March. That's later on. That's no problem. Like, I don't need to worry about my supplementals. I don't need to worry about any portfolios, any interviews, none of it. I'm going to take a break. Because I totally burned out in my first semester of, I guess that would be sophomore year, basically right before you transfer. That first semester is when I burnt out. And honestly, I've never quite recovered since then. So make sure if you've done your stuff, take a breath, give yourself peace, take it a little bit easier that next semester. It's a really tough time right now, so you should be doing that anyways, I hope. Make sure that you have your ducks in a row, so you're not like me, like third week of March with the April 1st deadline, asking some poor professor who's like trying to organize a musical to like write you a recommendation letter, because they're probably not going to write it as glowing or as good as they would given a lot more time. That's one piece of concrete advice that I would give to them. Other than that, make sure you don't burn out. Try not to. You really should enjoy your time once you have transferred, and the way to do that is to make sure that you don't burn out now.
So my biggest advice, once you're at a college or you're at community college, whatever it may be, and you're thinking about transferring, the first thing is to seek out a mentor or to talk to, a college advisor or counselor, because coming from UC Davis, having failed my classes, I really didn't know what direction I wanted to go. I just knew that I wanted to go to UC Berkeley, as it was my dream college growing up. Community college can be really hard. It can be very isolating, especially an online platform where it might be really difficult to make friends and find a community right now. That shouldn't stop you from reaching out, especially if you need help. The most important thing is to reach out when you need help, and to also be grateful of those who give you their time. When it comes to transferring to college, it's definitely a very difficult process, requires a lot of consideration and time and the effort you put into it. With that being said, feel free to reach out to me. My social media handle on Instagram is aloe vera baby with the BBY at the end. And yeah, I'd love to help any way I can and answer any questions about transferring. Thank you so much. This was really a great opportunity.
For potential transfers, I would say if you're hesitant about attempting to transfer to Cal, I say just do it. because at the end of the day, the worst they can say is no. And that doesn't mean you're any kind of less of a student or less of an academic, or it just means that they didn't have enough space. Because how many people apply to UC Berkeley versus how many spaces they have, it's just super limited. And so you might be the most qualified person in the world, and just it's just a matter of numbers, and so that doesn't matter. And so I would just encourage any community college transfer to try and apply. And the worst you can hear is no. And then from there, you just go to another university. And at the end of the day, after 2 years, everyone graduates with their bachelor's degree and goes and gets a job. And so by then, things like which university you went to, that's not a huge deal anymore. Wherever you get into, there will be equally as many opportunities and equally as many resources for you to take advantage of. And yeah, so my advice to prospective transfers would be just to try and get into anywhere you can. Again, it was a pleasure to share my experiences. So once again, thank you for letting me speak tonight, and I hope this video gets lots of views. Like and subscribe.
Well, like Aymaan said, it has been a great pleasure getting to hear everybody speak about their personal experiences as a transfer student at UC Berkeley during a pandemic. I myself have really enjoyed getting the chance to document this hopefully unique experience from multiple perspectives. I hope you watching enjoyed this video, and hopefully it gave you a little bit more of an inside look as to what it's like to be a transfer student during a pandemic. If you did enjoy this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, leave me any questions, comments, or concerns below, and don't forget to check out the description for further watching and links to people's social media handles if they have one. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.